You realize you just mentioned the buzzword, and there's 1,000 people writing down that word actinium, and they're thinking in their minds, that's not FDA approved. How did this person get actinium? And what do you say about that?
So there are different ways to get actinium right now. One is clinical trials in the United States. I think some investigators having actinium trials. Whether or not we're opening any here, I don't honestly know. But if I want a patient to get actinium, I typically send them overseas to places like Germany or Turkey or Australia. These are the epicenters for isotope therapy, and they have access to actinium. Right now, for whatever reason, we're using a lot of Turkey because patients are getting in and out very smoothly. And they actually, there's a doctor there who I really like, Dr. Kezban. She is incredibly thoughtful about patients. She's very sensitive. I sense that she thinks about cancer treatment like we do here in my clinic.
Yeah.
And she is administering actinium. And she also administers lutetium to patients that don't qualify per FDA regulations in the United States. And they really like Turkey. They say that Istanbul is much more interesting than Rochester, Minnesota. I have no idea why.
How's that possible?
I mean, we were the gateway to the north. Istanbul was the gateway between Europe and Asia. You know, I mean, how could it be more possible that, but they say that the care is outstanding at their facility. And I have no shame in saying that it's a Johns Hopkins sponsored hospital, and it's JACO approved. And it's a very, very good place to get treatment. So it's a really good place.
At the risk of becoming more popular, can you repeat that doctor's name again in case people want to Google the person in Turkey? Because that's a name I have not heard.
I don't even know how to pronounce her name. Okay. But I call her Dr. Kezban. Her last name is spelled, or her last name has even little symbols on it, and I don't know what they mean. Her name is Dr. Kezban, Kezban. Her last name is Berberoğlu. Berberoğlu. I'm so ashamed that I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
So if you I'll say it again, sorry.
Yeah, Berberog with a little squiggle.
Yeah.
Lu. And, you know, the only reason I'm bringing this up is she's provided incredible care of my patients. And I have not seen the level of professionalism and responsiveness from many different physician groups, including U.S., that I've seen come out of Turkey. It's just shocking. They must stay up all night. They have English interpreters. They have handlers. They have people that respectfully review medical cases. They assist with everything. And I've written long introductions, and I've gotten responses back in 20 minutes from these people in the middle of their night. And the patients that go over have raved about the care. So the only reason I think it's worth mentioning it is I think that they represent a lot of what I envisioned medicine to be about when I got into the field of medicine.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost a lot of, not a lot, but I think we've lost some of that.
Yeah.
They're very patient care oriented, and I think that they basically should be applauded for their efforts, you know.
Look, I think that's a watershed moment. I'm not here to say that that's where your miracle is going to be, but when people are looking for options and they have the ability to go somewhere and think about those options, and I didn't ask you about price. I'm sure it costs a little bit of money here, but if you want to say something on price, if it's manageable, that's fine. But what PCRI is about is that people forget that it was 6-7 years ago. There were many people calling the helpline and calling the center, I call it, and they were being sent for PSMA scans at UCLA. They were being sent to Heidelberg for lutetium and actinium. And that was years before, and it turned out to be a correct move for many people. So I think this is the surprise of my Q&A. I did not see the Turkey endorsement come in, and that's in Istanbul, you said?
Istanbul.
Okay.
So again, I want to put things in the right perspective. Dr. Kratochvil in Germany with Dr.
Yes.
Haberkorn, incredible physicians.
Yes.
And they broke their backs to treat my patients. And they did a phenomenal job. And I don't ever want to give an indication that this person is better than that person.
Right.
But the reality has been in the last 3 years that there have been a lot of forces that are unforeseen and difficult to deal with. One of the forces has been COVID. The other force has been availability of isotope. The other one is resources at the individual institutions and what are their federal regulations, what are their governmental restrictions. On top of it, we add to the fact that not everyone's a millionaire, right?
Right.
A lot of patients are going to mortgage their house in the hopes that they can get a couple extra days on this planet. And so we have to consider all of these factors because the futures of these people are partly embedded in the decision as to what's best for them. So I don't mind saying that, you know, sending patients to Turkey has been shockingly cheaper. I think that their treatments have been on the order of $7,000 per treatment. I think that their PSMA PET scan is $60, $60. Okay. I think that the hotel and airfare has been relatively reasonable. It doesn't mean that that Dr. Kezban's a better doctor or more well-intentioned, but she is an excellent physician and she cares.
Yeah.
And I know that Dr. Lenzo in Australia, extraordinary guy, wonderful physician, one of the best physicians, but it's been hard to get in and out of Australia. That's a big trip, costs a lot of money. Plus during COVID, there were a lot of lockdowns. On top of it, for Germany, it's been hard to get in and out of Germany because the government kept shutting down and restricting travel. And on top of it, there have been expectations of the government that they need to focus resource and privilege on German citizens. So that's where Dr. Kezban comes into the equation. But I don't ever want to, you know, I get nothing out of this. I'm just interested in my patients or patients out there who are in a desperate situation or a concerning situation, you know, their ability to get something they need.
Look, the reality is you're a really nice guy. You're an attractive man. I love you like a brother, but the reality is part of the reason we keep coming back to you is you have one of the busiest clinics in the world. And so if you don't know what's going on I feel like I know what's going on globally, but if I turn to people like you to tell me, what am I missing? What else is going on globally? And those are the kind of moments. Nobody is implying that everybody's got to run there and pay for this. I just like the idea that you just still open up more opportunity, more times at bat if someone wants to do that. I'll tell you one thing that's been my experience with all these places that you mentioned, and probably Turkey, you have to tell me if I'm right or wrong, is at least when people called up, they got a very candid answer as to how much it would cost. It was candid. It was upfront. They knew what they were. It wasn't a guessing game. And so maybe that's the same experience you had.
It really, you know, for me, it's been eye-opening because, you know, this happened with U.S. consumerism back in many of the earlier recessions when U.S. businesses started to fail. Everyone's sitting around saying, well, why is U.S. business failing? And then all of a sudden someone comes out and says, Well, it's because we treat our consumers poorly, right? So then there was an increased focus on how to treat consumers. The thing that has been really eye-opening to me is the level of respect and care and straightforwardness and facilitatory kind of guidance that patients that go overseas get compared to what we get in the U.S. I mean, I think that we are lucky at Mayo because I do think that we have a business apparatus that tries to take care of patients as much as possible. But overseas, it's palpable. They give you, interpreters. They're sensitive to where you came from. They give you prices. They tell you what hotel to stay in. They, welcome you and treat you like you are a very important person who's going through a hard journey, right? I'd like to see, I'm not knocking anything, but I think that I'd like to see a lot more of that here in the United States,